Hello, this is Eye on Africa. I'm Yena Lee. Coming up on tonight's show, tens of thousands of people return to the streets of Sudan demanding the return of civilian rule. This despite military leaders reinstating Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok. And it's the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. We bring you a report on how the pandemic has exposed the abuse some women face daily in Kenya. And with just 45 days till kickoff for this year's Africa Cup of Nations, organisers warn that construction in Cameroon needs to speed up. Yaoundé says there's no need to worry. Let's start the show in Sudan, where tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets on Thursday, once again demanding the return of a fully civilian government. Last October's military coup prompted repeated mass demonstrations in Khartoum and other major cities. In a key concession, generals reinstated Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdok Sunday. The latter signed a deal with military leaders, but those on the streets aren't satisfied. Take a listen.
No one can make us kneel by buying Hamdok. Down with the military council, down with Burhan, and down with any killer or accomplice in this coup, and anyone who wants to buy the civilian rule or buy the martyrs' blood and thinks we will be quiet.
The deal doesn't represent us as revolutionaries. It represents the military council and Hamdok. Now we consider Hamdok a traitor. What he did is a stab in the back of the revolution, and we are out to dismantle the partnership which has blood all over it.
To Somalia next, Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for a suicide bomb attack outside a school in Mogadishu. At least 8 people were killed after the blast went off at around 7:30 a.m. local time. Witnesses describe classroom ceilings and walls crashing down. A UN security convoy was the intended target, according to the Islamist militants. Simon Harding has the story.
A deadly attack in the heart of the Somali capital. A trail of destruction is left in the wake of the explosion. Rubble litters the street where a school used to stand.
At about 7:30 local time, as school students got into their classes, a big explosion rocked the whole area. You can understand how it feels when many students, mostly children, came under attack as schoolrooms collapsed and other key lab materials smashed into pieces.
Terrorist group Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack, adding their intended target was a UN convoy. Emergency personnel scrambled to save victims of the strike, as well as multiple deaths. Several school children were injured by the explosion.
We were extremely terrified by the blast. As I was in class giving a lesson, a huge blast came and hit our compounds. We were disorientated, and we were covered with dust and smoke.
This is the latest in a string of attacks on Mogadishu. In March, more than 20 people were killed when a car bomb hit the popular Lul Yemeni restaurant near the port of the city. The presidential palace had also been targeted in February. All of these attacks were linked to and claimed by terror group Al-Shabaab. The insurgents have multiplied attacks on the nation's biggest city after they were kicked out of Mogadishu in 2011 by the army with the help of African Union soldiers. Despite some territorial losses, Al-Shabaab still govern areas in the south of Somalia, where their policies include the enforcement of strict Sharia law.
Let's cross over to Western Africa next. Gambia's Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission has wrapped up its 3-year inquiry into former President Yahya Jammeh. Their report concluded that 240 to 250 people were killed by the state or state agents. Without naming names, it said that those who bore the greatest responsibilities should be prosecuted. Jammeh was in power for 22 years until 2016. He's currently living in exile in Equatorial Guinea. He denies any wrongdoing. Scientists in South Africa have found a new COVID-19 variant. So far, they've checked just 100 specimens, but they say that they're keeping an eye on it as it has a potential to resist to immunity and be more transmissible. The World Health Organization's virus evolution team is set to discuss this variant on Friday. France 24's correspondent Nadine Theron explains.
Scientists say the B11529 variant carries an extremely large amount of mutations and it's spreading at a worrisome rate. This is concerning because the new variant could be more transmissible and more resistant to vaccines and the natural immune system. 22 cases of the new variant have been detected in South Africa's most densely populated province of Gauteng, and it's been detected in other provinces too, while new cases are still being confirmed. Hospitalizations in the country have increased, but it's uncertain whether the new variant causes milder or more severe disease. 3 cases have been detected in the neighboring country of Botswana and 1 in Hong Kong in someone who has traveled to South Africa. Most cases of the new variants are young people under 25, the least vaccinated age category. Only 35% of South Africa's total population have been fully vaccinated, and vaccination rates are dropping, although there's no shortage of vaccines. South African health authorities have said that they're still uncertain what the full significance of the new variant is. But in the meantime, the government here is considering a tightening of COVID-19 lockdown restrictions ahead of the festive season. The National Coronavirus Command Council and the Cabinet are meeting over the weekend to discuss this possibility.
November 25th marks the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed dangerous situations for women around the world, and Kenya is no exception. The National Crime Centre there has recorded a 92% surge in gender-based violence last year. The government has set up some measures in recent months, such as the creation of new shelters. Our correspondents report.
Thank you for calling Usikimia.
Every day, Maureen receives up to 150 calls from women in distress. She works with a local NGO that supports people facing gender-based violence.
This is like the whole of September and October and part of November.
Since the start of the COVID pandemic, Kenya recorded a 92% surge in gender-based violence, according to a study by the National Crime Research Centre. Survivors need help quick, and this NGO is providing it.
So the first thing to do is for this person to go to hospital, for the survivor to go to hospital and receive treatment. After this survivor receives treatment, then they receive psychosocial support.
Without such services, these women would have nowhere to turn. This year, the non-profit group has rescued over 450 women. Brenda, a mother of 3, faced abuse at the hands of her husband. She received assistance and counseling at their safe house.
Most people don't know where they can get help. If I had known I could get help here, maybe I would have left a long time ago. Maybe I would have been helped back on my feet and would be in a much better place than I am now.
But these organizations are overstretched. In November, a law was passed to establish government-run safe houses across Nairobi. Policy specialists hope the law will be backed by action.
A lot of counties have got sexual and gender-based violence bills or acts. They're working towards those. And then once they do that, then they stop. If you look at their plans and budgets, there is no deliberate effort to then plan for the way they plan for, say, education infrastructure, health infrastructure, roads, etc.
To implement such laws and intensify its efforts against gender-based violence, the government has pledged to invest $23 million by 2022.
And finally, we end on some football news. With 45 days left until the Africa Cup of Nations, the Confederation of African Football is putting pressure on host nation Cameroon. Officials are worried Olembe Stadium in the capital Yaoundé might not be ready. France 24 correspondent Claudia Nsono has the latest.
The Confederation of African Football has written a letter to Cameroon reminding the host nation that it has until the 30th of November to complete the stadium, threatening to relocate the opening ceremony if it is not ready by the deadline. It should be recorded that the Olembe Stadium was one of the major reasons for the withdrawal of Cameroon's hosting rights of the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations. Back then, major construction delays and allegations of corruption meant that the event was transferred to Egypt instead. Now, in response to the very latest warnings, the government has publicly reassured CAF officials.
The opening and closing ceremonies of the 2021 AFCON will take place at the Olembe Stadium and nowhere else, as the Confederation of African Football confirmed in a recent communiqué.
Meanwhile, in an attempt to calm the tensions, a delegation from the president's office has left for Egypt to attend CAF's extraordinary assembly, which is set to take place in Cairo on Friday.
That's it for Eye on Africa. More international news coming up next with Mark Owen.
In 2014, Montenegro joined forces with China for a colossal project, the construction of the country's first highway.
Pemex is a company which began to show basically during the night, and now all of a sudden we have Pemex winning all those state tenders.
Colossal debt, environmental pollution, and opaque communication.
They have no right to make any interview from media and newspapers.
We do not have permission from the government of Montenegro.
Will the country ever see the end of the tunnel? Watch Reporters, Scandal in Montenegro on France 24 and France24.com.